Though I'm decent at retouching and editing, I don't do a lot of it in my images. I'm not a fashion shooter, so I don't need to alter people's faces or bodies. Most of the time, if I can't frame an image the way that I want it because there's something else extra in the frame, then I just don't shoot it. But there are times when I need to perform these types of edits, so I'm going to do some right now just to give you a sense of how ridiculous the power of Photoshop actually is. I've got this image here, which I like. It's simple. And it's a little, I don't think it's weird, but it's a very simple composition. I like this building down here. I like the trees. This bird up here is nice. There's a nice relationship between them. The sky is somewhat attractive. The problem is I need it square. I'm going to put it in a square layout and I can't have this rectangular image. So that would lend one to believe that cropping is in order. The problem is if I crop to a square, I lose the bird. I lose a good part of the building, so I really like all these pigeons on this building over here, and the building's just barely tucked into the corner. Cropping's just not going to work on this image. The things in the image itself are not arranged properly, so I'm going to rearrange them. There are a lot of different ways I could do this rearranging. I could actually pick up different things and move them around. That would be a lot of work, and getting the seams of different layers working right would be difficult. Fortunately, Photoshop has a fairly extreme feature here called Content Aware Scale. I'm going to call that up. It's just tucked away in one of the menus here. There are a lot of really powerful little tools hidden away throughout Photoshop. I'm going to bring it up, and I get handles around my image that look like normal crop handles, but they're not. What they're going to do is they're going to scale. So if I click on this side and drag to the left, the image is going to be squeezed to the left. Now if you think about like getting some silly putty and sticking it on a comic strip in a newspaper, you can stretch it and squeeze it, and as you do, the figures get stretched and squeezed and they distort and they don't look right. So in theory, if I stretch this to squeeze it, the trees are going to get skinny and the building's going to get skinnier and everything's going to look messed up, and I'm going to end up with a lousy image. But that's not what Content Aware Scale does. As I drag, it changes the relationship of things in the image without changing their size. Look, as I drag this back and forth, the trees are not getting skinny. The building is not getting skinny. The seagull up there in the sky stays looking like a seagull. So how is it doing this? One way you can really see what it's up to is watch these clouds back here as I do the scale here. You might be able to hear that the fan in my computer is kicked on because Photoshop is having to think so hard to do this scale. It's actually chewing up enough processing power that the thing's getting hot. So watch those clouds there. You can see that's where it's choosing to jettison data and distort things. So it's very intelligently figuring out what is the content of the image and what is the background, and if possible, it's trying to discard background pixels to give me the room to scale the content pixels. And it's pretty amazing. So I think that's good. I think that's going to give me room to now do a square crop while maintaining the different image elements that I want. So I have to let that think for a bit. And when it's done, I have this. Now I still have all this white stuff over there. I'm not going to worry about that because I'm going to grab my crop tool, set it to square, and now when I go to a square crop, I get the relationship that I want, the trees and the building and the bird, and they all fit in my square frame. So right away, I'm on the road to getting the image that I want. This doesn't look edited, like I said before. The mark of a good edit is that you can't see that it's happened. I've got my building here. It doesn't look stretched or squished or anything, neither do the trees. I have this bird up here. Might be cooler if there were more birds. One bird is an anomaly. 3 birds looks like an actual design element. I'm gonna just circle this bird here and drag a copy of it over here. Actually, I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to copy it and paste it so that the bird comes in a different layer. So now you can see I've got another layer down here that's holding this bird. And if I grab my eraser tool, I can ditch this extra sky around the bird. I'm going to zoom in here. And as I zoomed in, I just noticed a little flaw in the image that I couldn't see when I was zoomed out. But it's something that I can very easily fix in Photoshop. We'll come back to that in a second. So all I'm doing is erasing the bits of this upper layer so that only the background layer shows through, and the bits I'm erasing are just that darker patch of sky that doesn't fit in the area where I pasted this second seagull. So now that I've got this one nicely done up, 2 seagulls is still not really a flock or a trend or anything. We need a third, and they should probably be flying in formation. So I'm going to stick this one, another copy, back here. Okay, that looks pretty good, except that the seagulls are all identical, and that's a giveaway that I've been messing with the image. So I need to alter these seagulls somehow. I'm going to do that with Photoshop's liquefy tool, which basically makes the image a big smeary goo that I can just push around so as to distort things. Whether they distort realistically or not depends on how good a job I do of pushing them around. Oops, I'm in the wrong filter here. That was lens correction. I meant to grab liquefy. Okay. So I've just zoomed in. I'm scrolling up here to where the birds are. I've by default got this just push around tool. I don't actually know what it's called. So I'm going to grab this wing and smear it over here and then just push around it to try and re-sculpt it into a different shape, which probably shouldn't be so pointy. And I don't need to make a perfectly realistic seagull. It needs to be evocative of a seagull. The main thing is it just needs to look different than the other seagulls, and that seems to be working pretty well. Push this one down a little bit. Again, these are kind of small in the final image, and I don't think most people are going to walk up and go, the first thing I better do is see if those 3 seagulls look identical or not. So this is not some kind of critical, a place where I need to be really critically precise. Just to break them up a little more, I'm going to use this other liquefy tool, which lets things bulge or squish. I'm going to make that seagull's head a little bit bigger. Okay, that looks like a seagull with a birth defect. There we go. And I'll use this one to make his tail bigger. So now I've got some variation. I could maybe play with that some more, but you get the idea. I'd mentioned before that there is a visible artifact in here when I zoom in. See how it's green on this side of the tree and magenta on this side of the tree? That's something called chromatic aberration. It's because I was shooting with a cheap lens. What's going on here is the different wavelengths of light, the different colors, are not being focused to the exact same spot, and their component parts are spilling out and becoming visible. Photoshop has a way of fixing that. I can go here to the lens correction filter, and I'm going to, in lens correction, zoom in on a problem area, and I'm going to come over here, and you can see something here called chromatic aberration. Fix green magenta fringe. That's what I have. Green here, magenta there. I'm just going to drag this slider around. Well, it's not doing much. Oh, it's still rendering. Okay. Look at this progress bar down here. Oh, there we go. That did it. I have no green or magenta fringe. Great. I'll say okay. That wasn't so tough. This is looking pretty good compositionally. The only thing is this building down here is too dark, so now we're back to just very normal edits that you've seen before, or that you saw me do in Photoshop a little bit ago. I'm going to brighten that building up. I'm using some masking tools here to constrain the brightening to just the building. And the reason I'm saying the building is too dark is I just know from experience that that's not going to print very well. I can double check my findings up here with this histogram thing that I was talking about earlier. I don't mind that the trees are almost silhouette. I don't mind that the birds are almost silhouette. We're pointing the camera into a sky. We expect things in the foreground to be silhouette. I need to touch up this mask a little bit to get it right, but that's easy enough to do. I inadvertently brightened the sky. This is the kind of stuff you can do in Photoshop, the kind of stuff that you can't do in Lightroom. Copying elements from here to there, liquefying them, changing the content of the image by stretching and squishing it, fixing. Actually, Lightroom will let you fix those chromatic aberration problems. It will also let you do this kind of localized adjustment, but here in Photoshop, I can do it all in one place. If I was going to spend more time on this image, I might consider taking this tree out of the foreground just to clean up this composition so that it's just these 2 palm trees, the building and the birds. I'll show you very quickly how I might do that. You saw a content-aware scale. I also have something called content-aware fill. I have just selected that area at the bottom. I'm going to tell Photoshop to just figure out what should go inside it. Whoops, it's on the wrong layer there. And that's something called content-aware fill. Yeah, it did an okay job. But what I should probably do now is come in and paint some clouds in. Photoshop actually has a clouds filter that will fill an area with clouds. They don't quite look like this cloud, so I'm not sure that that would really work. And I would just feel my way through the image until I've got it the way that I want it. This is the kind of power you have in Photoshop. If you think this is the kind of stuff you want to learn how to do just because it's fun, which it is, or because you do like really creating images that aren't real, Photoshop is the way to go. So you're going to want to look into it in much greater detail.